Welcome to DasGeek. So what we're going to do here today, I need you to make sure you listen at first that this is a beta. If you're doing this, you need to do this on a machine that you've backed up all the important files and is not a production machine that you can afford to not have to re-image, because this is beta. Expect glitches, expect bugs, everything else. But with that being said, if you want to move forward, this is the video to show you how to go ahead and upgrade to the 1904 beta. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, one is to help out the developers by testing the distro out and submitting bug reports when you run into issues. That could be really helpful for them to make sure they have a successful 19.04 launch, I think coming later in April. The other reason may be so that you can play with some of the features that come with Linux kernel 5.0. You can see here I'm in Ubuntu Mate 19.04, and it comes with the 5.0.0-8 Linux kernel. The 5.0 kernel comes with tons of improvements and support for other hardware out there. Just to give you an idea of some of the things, we're going to check out Phoronix's page here on the Linux kernel. And you can see some of the, of course, FreeSync support now for AMD in Linux, which is amazing. Lots of Vega support for their new graphic cards, including the Radeon 7. You're going to have the 4.20 Plus kernel to be on Radeon 7 card. And if you are on the current 18.10 release of Ubuntu, you're going to have a 1280 by 720 default with that video card, because the kernel they're on is so old, so 6 to 8 months old. So in that case, you're going to, with the 5.0, you're going to have support for additional things with NVIDIA. You're going to have all kinds of additional processor support and other hardware pieces as well, such as different mice compatibility, Wacom tablets, all kinds of things vendors are now throwing into the kernel. And unfortunately, with this behind the non-rolling releases are, you haven't been able to experience that yet. So if you're on a Radeon 7, you could use something like a UKUU to update your kernel in your current 18.10, but that's kind of hacking around your system a little bit, although I did that up to this point when I needed to use Ubuntu. But being on Arch primarily, if you are experienced enough, I highly recommend it. Arch is just a fantastic experience of which you can constantly be on the latest and greatest kernel and enjoy those benefits. But back to this video, to upgrade your machine is pretty simple. Once you've made sure you've done backups, because I do not want to see, oh, you screwed up my machine, DasGeek. Don't you do it. You got to do all your backups, test your backups, make sure they work. Non-production machine. You want to test out 19.04 to help the developers. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to do a sudo apt update. All this will be in the show notes. Sudo apt upgrade, sudo apt dist-upgrade. This kind of gets everything you have up to the latest iterations that 18.10 has. You're going to do a sudo apt autoremove to get rid of anything you don't need. Last, you're going to do a quick check here using the sudo nano etc update release upgrades. And what you're looking for here is just to make sure that the prompt equals normal here. So everything else is commented out, and that should be your default. And I'm pretty sure yours is going to say this unless you've changed it before, but you just want to do that verification that says normal there. And last, you're going to type in this command, which is what's going to execute the upgrade. Once you execute this upgrade, there's no going back. Well, you technically could reimage your machine and all that, but it's going to be difficult. So make sure you've done all your backups and stuff before then. At that point, once that's done, between 30 minutes to an hour to do that full upgrade, depending on your machine, could be less, could be more, you're going to be in 19.04, and you could verify that using the uname-a and see that you're on the latest kernel. Now, in 19.04, most of the enhancements you're going to see at this point are under the hood. So there's not a whole lot of features to really show you. I've played with the GNOME and I've played with Ubuntu Mate now that make things totally different. There's little features here and there that have switched and some bug fixes, but most of it's going to be in the performance of the 5.0 kernel. Some of the things that I noticed in Mate's notes that they've changed, and of course there are some bugs, for instance, in audio switching and things like that. You can look at the Mate bug report for 19.04 to see some of those, but for the most part, they're kind of superficial bugs, meaning you can pretty easily still work around it and get what you need. One of the issues I've run into that I can't get past because of the Pulse Audio Switcher yet is the fact that Lightworks does not have a setting in it to allow you to change audio sources. And so for whatever reason, it's defaulting to a monitor whereas every other program seems to be paying attention to pulse audio. So I'm not sure why that's happening just yet. I've tried to play with ALSA and some things to change it around there, and also in Pulse, and it just doesn't seem to listen to what I'm doing. So again, you may run into little issues like that, but for the most part, everything's been pretty stable. I've been able to record videos, I've been able to game, and this is on the Radeon 7. So obviously with the 5.0 kernel, we now have support for this card built into the kernel, which is amazing. So 19.04, I think, is going to be one of those releases where you're going to not really be able to see major changes. I'll show you some of the panel options that I noticed in the Mate, like the ability to kind of mimic the Unity toolbar and things like that a little easier. But it's going to be more one of those things where you're just going to enjoy the performance and compatibility of the kernel that it offers, unless they plan on throwing, there's obviously a lot of time left still, a lot more features in. I'm not a big fan of the Unity, but that's kind of an example of how you could get Mate to kind of mimic the Unity toolbar on the left there. So that's one of the things that I noticed. There were some more tweaking options and things like that out there, but not going to be a major game changer for what you're going to see. Obviously, some new backgrounds and things probably to choose from. Although I was a little disappointed in Mate that there wasn't this beautiful wallpaper with the dingo, like the white dingo, disco dingo in here image, because I just think that artwork is so cool. I would love to have seen an iteration like that. And then I noticed this snail thing, and I have to tell Wimpy, the snail and an operating system, those two don't go together. I think you should change this wallpaper out. I don't know if there's something about the snail in Mate's past or anything that it's the kind of official. I don't know why this one's here. I mean, it's neat looking ish, but the snail just doesn't derive the right imagery, and certainly Mate is a pretty snappy desktop environment, so it doesn't conjure the right images to me to have that as a wallpaper. But this is what I've seen. This is the first wallpaper your system comes with, and overall I have had no issues. Maybe some sluggishness in some of the menus and things like that, and of course you can see some of the icons. Obviously I can expand the toolbar a little bit. The icons seem to be cut off even when you do that with things like the Synology NAS, and VLC seems to look cut off there on the top. Things that obviously could change once the full release is out there. So now, just for fun, now that you know how to upgrade to the beta, we're going to play some games, and that game's going to be Borderlands 2, because we are celebrating the excitement coming out for Borderlands 3 soon, which hopefully lands in Linux, or at least can be played through Proton. I'm very excited about this, and I'll show you the frames per second in the upper right-hand corner so you can see how fast it is. So now we're in Borderlands 2, and you can see our frames per second in the upper right-hand corner. Of course, once we get into some action and things, that will drop, and it's very important to notice that we are recording with OBS at the same time in high quality, so that's going to take an impact on our frames. But obviously, the Radeon 7 doing some kick-butt FPS here, and we'll get into some action. Certainly well above the 60 frames per second that people are wanting to get on consoles, and depending on some of the lower price, low to medium video cards, what most people are seeking out is that 60 FPS. We're well above that in the Radeon world. So this is an amazing game. Borderlands 3 is coming out. I already hear people whining about, oh, the graphics aren't as good as a game should be these days with Borderlands 3. It looks like Borderlands 2-ish. I'm not as concerned about graphics in this case with Borderlands, because this is one of the funniest, greatest games. It's more about storyline. The graphics are cool, but the effects look like they're there. As long as they keep the great, fantastic character writing and things, I'll be pretty happy with this game. So with Borderlands 3, when it drops and comes out, hopefully they give us some Linux support. Direct port on day one would be absolutely amazing, or Feral or Proton or something works like that would be acceptable as well. But just wanted to show you that Linux kernel 5.0 unleashes a lot of performance improvements. Even if you're on a Vega or an RX line, you're just going to see a lot of improvements with the latest drivers and iterations out there, all the work that AMD has done. If you're on NVIDIA, of course, you're on their proprietary drivers, so you're probably not going to notice as much enhancement, although you may get some more power out of your CPU and things. There's just a lot of optimization that has happened in the kernel, and that's one of my issues. I wish Ubuntu would release a rolling release version. One of the flavors they have is a rolling release flavor, because there's so much work that gets missed out. And I understand they do it for the stability, and that's great, but there's so much work that goes into these kernels in the 6 to 8 months between a new Ubuntu version, and it just happens to be such a popular distribution that people don't get to see all of that work for such a long time. And I think that can be a shame, unless they're hacking their system a little bit with like a UKUU, or if you're in Arch, of course, you've been enjoying this performance for a while. But Arch isn't very easy for most people to install, but it is worth it. Believe me, it is worth it if you do give it a try. I'm just a huge fan. But 19.04, I'm very excited with 4, and I like that the focus is primarily on the driver, on the kernel here. And so far, being in beta, the amount of bugs experienced is very low, so I think that speaks a lot to the great work that the teams are doing over there to get their distros ready to go. And of course, I die like normal, because that's what happens in these games. Anyways, that's my video. Show you how to upgrade to 19.04 if you want to. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Maybe you disagree. Ubuntu should never have a rolling release flavor. Until next time, get out there and fill your brains.
Don't forget to subscribe. Does not like the video.